Narrated by Liam, 17 While. They say your first love leaves a scar you never quite forget. I used to think that was just poetry, the kind they feed us in the books we pretend to read in school. But when she walked into my life, everything changed. Not with fireworks. Not with some magical music cue like in the movies. Just with her eyes. Her name was Miss Callahan. She was our new literature teacher, 29, confident, the kind of woman who walked into a room and owned it without even trying. The other kids didn't care much. To them, she was just another adult with a stack of books and a clipboard full of rules. But to me, she was a revelation. I sat in the back of the class that first Monday morning, chin resting on my hand, half asleep, until she started reading out loud from The Great Gatsby. And suddenly, the way she spoke, it wasn't just words. It was like she lived the story. Her voice was soft but fierce, each sentence bleeding emotion. For the first time in forever, I listened, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. "What's your name?" she asked after class that day, her eyes locking on mine like they'd been searching for something. "Liam," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "You look like you wanted to say something during Gatsby's last line." "Yeah, I think he never really loved Daisy. He loved the idea of her." She smiled. Not politely, genuinely. Like she saw me. "That's a beautiful insight, Liam." My heart thudded in my chest. No one ever called what I said beautiful before. From that day on, something changed between us. It was subtle, quiet, like a note in a melody only I could hear. She'd ask me more questions in class. Hold eye contact a little longer. Once, when I stayed behind to ask about an essay, we ended up talking for an hour about Sylvia Plath and how pain lives in poetry. "You have an old soul," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Maybe, or maybe I'm just always searching for someone to understand me. She didn't answer that, but the silence between us felt full, not empty. Weeks passed. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it, that no teacher, especially not someone like her, could ever see a 17-year-old boy as anything more than a student. But then came the letter. I found it tucked inside the back cover of my annotated Fitzgerald novel. Folded once. My name written in flowing cursive. No one saw. My hands trembled as I opened it in the boys' bathroom stall, heart beating so loud it drowned out everything. Asterisk Liam. I shouldn't write this. I know that. But there are moments when I look at you and see something real. Not a student. Not a boy. But someone with a heart I recognize. I don't know what that means yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe too much. A. Asterisk. A. Callahan. She didn't sign it like a teacher. She signed it like a woman. I stared at the words until they blurred. My breath caught in my throat. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, terrified, thrilled, unsure whether I was about to fall or fly. I skipped my next class, walked out into the rain, letting it soak me to the skin. My thoughts were a hurricane. This wasn't just some high school crush anymore. This was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words kept replaying in my mind. Not a student, not a boy, but someone with a heart I recognize. Did that mean she felt the same? Was she testing me? Or confessing? Or maybe both? The next day, we didn't say a word about the letter. But everything felt different. Her hands trembled slightly when she passed back my paper. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to say something, anything, but I didn't know how. That Friday, she assigned us an essay. Write about a moment that changed you. I wrote about her. I didn't name her, of course. I called her the voice that read me like a book. I turned it in with trembling hands. She gave it back on Monday with no grade, just a note scribbled in the corner. "That voice hears you too." We were dancing on a line, one we both knew we shouldn't cross. But every glance, every pause, every half-smile made it harder. I started staying late after school, helping organize books, inventing excuses. She never said no. One evening, we stayed until the sun dipped below the windows. She turned to me, hair haloed by fading light, and said, "You make me forget I'm supposed to be someone else." I didn't know what to say. My chest felt like it might explode. Then came the night that changed everything. The school was hosting a poetry reading. She asked me to read something I wrote. I was terrified, but I agreed. When I stood on that stage, hands trembling, voice shaking, I read a poem I wrote the night I got her letter. It was raw, honest, maybe too honest. When I looked up, her eyes were full of tears. Later, in the dark of the empty classroom, she whispered, "Liam, this, whatever this is, it can't happen. I nodded. I know. But then I added. But it already did. She didn't argue. She just touched my cheek. One soft, aching second. And then she walked away. I tried to forget. After that night, when my fingertips barely grazed hers across the desk and her voice trembled saying my name, Daniel, I told myself it was just a moment. A passing shadow. An echo that meant nothing. But I lied. And every time I saw her again, I felt like a match held too close to its flame. She avoided my eyes the next day. I watched her walk into class, her stride a little sharper, a folder clutched tighter to her chest, her eyes scanning everywhere but me. When she spoke, her voice was businesslike, crisp, but I could hear the weight behind it, as if she was speaking through a storm only we could feel. I tried to focus on the lesson. I tried so hard. But every chalk line on the board, every turn of the page, felt like static noise. I was waiting for something, anything, that would make sense of this mess inside me. When the bell rang, she gathered her things quickly, but I was already walking up to her desk. Miss Hart. She froze, then slowly turned to me. Daniel, she said, you should go. Your next class. I need to talk to you. Her eyes locked on mine. Not here. I felt it again. That current. Invisible, electric. We didn't speak for 2 days after that. But the silence screamed louder than words. It was Friday evening when it finally happened. I stayed late after class under the pretense of extra tutoring. She agreed. Reluctantly, hesitantly. And when the school hallways fell silent and the last echoes of students faded, we were alone. She sat across from me in the empty classroom. The sun cast long shadows on the floor, and dust floated like snowflakes in the golden light. You can't do this, she said softly. Whatever it is you think you're feeling. I know what I'm feeling. She looked at me, long and hard. You're 17. I'll be 18 in a month. She flinched at how fast I answered. This isn't about a number, she said. You're my student. I'm your teacher. There are lines, Daniel. And those lines are there for a reason. I looked down at my hands. Then why did you touch my hand the other night? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the fading sky. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. Because, for a second, I forgot the lines. Silence. The kind that presses against your chest and squeezes the air out of your lungs. Then she turned to me, and for the first time, there were no masks. No teacher. No student. Just two people, caught in the quiet disaster of wanting something we shouldn't. I haven't felt this way in a long time, she said. I thought I buried that part of myself. But you, her voice cracked, you brought it back. That night, we didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. But the words we spoke held more intimacy than skin ever could. She told me about her past. How she had once been engaged. How he left her 2 weeks before the wedding. How she stopped believing in love the same day she packed away her white dress. I told her about my parents. How they barely noticed me anymore. Too busy shouting at each other or sitting in cold silence. How I sometimes walked the streets at night just to feel less alone. We sat in that classroom for hours. No desk between us now. Just shared pain. Shared loneliness. Shared longing. Monday morning came, and the world went on pretending nothing had changed. She acted normal. More distant, even. She smiled at other students. Corrected homework. Laughed once or twice at a joke. But when she looked at me, I saw it. That same ache. That same storm. And I knew then, it wasn't over. A week later, she gave me a book after class. No title, I said, flipping through it. No name on the cover. It's a collection of letters, she replied. From someone who couldn't say what they felt out loud. I looked up at her. Her eyes were glassy. Is this for me? I didn't say that, she said. But the small smile on her lips said everything else. I read every page like a starving man at a feast. The letters were poetic, raw, and filled with metaphors. One described love as a locked room with windows that never open. Another spoke of wanting to scream your name in a world where whispers are all that's allowed. It wasn't signed, but I knew. She wrote them. We started leaving notes for each other. Tiny folded papers slipped under books, taped beneath desks, hidden behind classroom posters. We never wrote names. We never signed them. But each note burned like fire in my pocket. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if the world stopped watching. Your eyes see more of me than anyone else ever has. I dreamed of you last night. You weren't mine there either. Each note was a lifeline, a heartbeat. And every time I read one, The part of me that felt invisible lit up like a signal flare in the dark. But reality doesn't wait for fairy tales. One afternoon, I saw her in the parking lot, talking to another teacher. A man. He laughed at something she said, touched her arm briefly. She smiled. Jealousy hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew it wasn't fair. I had no claim, no right, but I couldn't stop it. That night, I left her a note. Harsher than I meant it to be. Maybe I'm just a distraction. A story to make you feel something again. The next day, there was no note waiting for me. None the day after. And on the third day, I found her classroom empty. Lights off. Door locked. My chest tightened. I went home that night and read her letters again. Every single one. Over and over. Until I fell asleep with pages against my face. Then Friday came. She was back. But something had changed. After class, she waited until the last student left. Then looked at me. We can't do this anymore. I felt something inside me tear. What changed? Everything, she said. You're too important. And I'm too afraid. I stood frozen. So that's it. Her voice cracked again. If I keep going, I'll lose everything. My job. My career. My name. But more than that, I'm afraid I'll lose you. And if that happens, I don't know if I'll survive it. I walked out that day with a storm inside me that no words could calm. But even as I left the room, I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Because love, real love, doesn't die in silence. It waits. And sometimes, it fights back. I always thought endings were simple. Clean. Either something worked, or it didn't. Either you walked away, or you stayed. But life doesn't give you clean exits. Not when love, guilt, and memory tangle together so tightly you can't tell one from the other. That summer, everything both ended and began. It had been 3 weeks since graduation. The air was hot and sticky, the kind of suffocating heat that made the hours melt together. I hadn't seen her since that night. The night we crossed the line. The night I touched a part of myself I never knew existed. Something wild, desperate, and terrifyingly real. I kept replaying it all in my head. Her trembling hands, the way she whispered my name like it was a sin, the silence afterward. She hadn't answered my messages. I told myself it was for the best, that it had to end. She was moving to another state. I was going to college. The line we crossed was never meant to exist in the first place. But my heart didn't care. One afternoon, I rode my bike out of town. No real destination, just the urge to breathe again. Without thinking, I found myself near her house. And there she was, in the garden, hair tied back, dirt on her knees, sunlight spilling across her shoulders like liquid gold. She looked up and froze. I should have turned around. I should have left. But I didn't. Hi, I said, voice raw. Hi, she replied, barely audible. I walked toward her, slowly, like approaching something sacred and fragile. I didn't mean to come here, I said. I don't know. She wiped her hands on her shorts and stood. I figured you'd show up eventually. We stared at each other. It felt like years had passed between us. Like we were two different people than the ones who shared that night. Why did you disappear? I asked. Her eyes shimmered. Because I had to. Because what we did, it was wrong. I know. She looked away. But it didn't feel wrong. I stepped closer. Then why are we pretending it didn't happen? She blinked hard. Because loving you terrifies me. Silence. Heavy, thunderous silence. I felt the weight of the world crash down in that moment. All the shame, the longing, the guilt, but also the truth, pure, glowing, terrifying truth. I still think about you every night, I whispered. She turned toward me slowly. And I think about you. Every second, every breath. But it doesn't make it right. I shook my head. Maybe it doesn't. But it doesn't make it a lie either. She looked like she was about to cry. I'm not supposed to love you. But you do. Tears finally fell from her eyes. Yes, she whispered. God help me, yes. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. We just stood there, broken and whole all at once. She invited me in. It was quiet inside. The air smelled like lavender and tea leaves. The home she once described in class, now real around me. We sat on the couch, knees barely touching. Like teenagers on the edge of something irreversible. Which, I guess we were. I've resigned, she said softly. What? I'm not going to teach anymore. I handed in my letter the day after that night. Because of me? Because of me, she corrected. Because I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't face a classroom and pretend that I didn't feel what I felt, that I hadn't broken the rules. We sat in silence for a long time. Then, almost imperceptibly, she reached out and took my hand. I'm not asking for forever, she said. I just want this moment. One real moment before life pulls us apart again. And so we had it. One summer of stolen days, of hiding from the world, of long talks under the stars, sunburns and lazy breakfasts, of hands brushing and hearts racing and eyes that said everything we were too afraid to. We both knew it wouldn't last. She had interviews in another state. I had college in the fall. But for those few weeks, we let ourselves believe. One evening, on the back porch, she looked at me and said, "If things were different." I stopped her. "Don't say it." I know, but I still wanted her to say it. Because even if we only had a borrowed summer, I wanted to believe it mattered. The last night, I helped her pack. The air felt heavy, like even the sky knew we were about to unravel. She kissed me goodbye like it was the first time and the last. And then she drove away, headlights shrinking into the dark. I never saw her again. But I still remember the way her voice shook when she said my name. The way she laughed when I burned the eggs. The way she looked at me like I was more than just a student. Like I was someone worth breaking the rules for. Now, years later, I wonder where she is. Whether she still thinks about me when the summer air gets too quiet. Whether she ever looks back. Because I do. Sometimes, love doesn't fit the rules. It isn't always fair or right or easy. But it's real. And no matter what the world says, that summer, we loved each other. And it happened.